Welcome, Trippers, to episode 4 of Tripping Through Transformation. I'm your host, Guillaume Poirier. And earlier this week, I had the opportunity to speak with retired Army Lieutenant Colonel Oakland McCulloch. Oak, as he goes by, is spending his retirement years writing and speaking on leadership and success. Oak kindly volunteered to come on the show and share some of his experience and knowledge and wisdom with us. So without further ado, here's my interview with Oak. And as always, balance, drop that beat.
Balance makes it bang.
Well, welcome, Trippers, to episode 4 of Tripping Through Transformation. Today, I have with me retired Army Lieutenant Colonel Oak McCulloch. Oak, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Yeah, well, thanks for having me, Guy. I've been looking forward to it.
Yeah, I was really excited when you reached out and you offered to come on this podcast, or what I'm trying to shape into a podcast.
I'm sure it's going to be great.
I appreciate it. I really like the support. And, you know, you and I have been in touch for about a year now. We've communicated through LinkedIn and exchanged some messages. And yeah, it's for you to come on today. It's really a great honor. So thank you.
You're welcome.
So like I was saying, you retired from the Army, 23 years of service, if I understand that correctly.
That's right.
And now you're using your retirement days speaking about leadership and success. Is that correct?
Yeah, and I wrote a leadership book, and now I'm starting a book on success. So right now I'm just getting out, talking as much as I can about servant leadership and how to be successful, and trying to get that message out.
No, that's great. So I could tell that leadership and success are near and dear to you. So I thought, what a better opportunity than today to ask you about, how good are those steaks at Cafe 316?
Say that again.
So the steaks at Cafe 316, tell me about those. You say Cafe 316 is your favorite restaurant, right?
Yes.
And you say you enjoy going there for steak.
Yeah, so it was. We lived in Mobile, Alabama, and that was my. My wife and I have never given gifts to each other for birthdays, for anniversary, not even really Christmas. What we always did wherever we lived was we just picked a nice restaurant. On her birthday, she'd pick a restaurant. On my birthday, I'd pick a restaurant. On anniversary, of course, she gets to pick it because she has to put up with me. And so we just went out for a nice dinner, and we almost always, while we lived in Mobile, and we lived there for about 5.5 years, I guess. It was always that restaurant. So
so I ask about Cafe 316 because you bring it up in your book, and my understanding is that at some point you had made a bet with one of your bosses, right?
Yeah.
And you had taken over the ROTC program at the University of Alabama.
South Alabama,
right?
Yeah.
And you had basically said, I have a 3-year plan and I want to have this many cadets within 3 years and I want to triple the program. And you went to your boss and you told him this, and he says, well, I don't think that's possible. And then you bet him a
he
steak
laughed
dinner.
at me, actually.
Right. So that kind of leads into my first question, like on leadership. So for you coming into this and having this goal and vision, and then you tell this to your boss and he kind of scoffs or laughs at it, how did that make you feel coming from your leader?
Yeah. So I understood. That program had never really been really successful for whatever reason. And so for me to say that I was coming in and I was going to do that, I understand why he had doubts. But it really comes down, in my opinion, and from my experience as a leader, is that if you really do have a vision of where you want to go, and you've waited a little bit, so you've seen what's going on in that organization, so you know what to fix, and then you have a plan on how you're going to get there, and then communicate it to the people that are going to get you there, because it's not going to be you as the leader. You're not the one that's going to get you from point A to point B. It's the people that work for you, the people you have the privilege to lead. And if they understand not only what you want to do, how you want to do it, and why you want to do it, but they also understand their piece of it, what they have to do to make that happen. And then you hold them to a standard so they do the things that you ask them to do. It's amazing what you can accomplish. It really is.
Right. If I remember correctly, one of your steps or part of your vision was to look after your cadets, to make sure that, you know, they're in good hands.
Yeah, because I'm a huge believer in servant leadership, that being a leader is not about you, not at all. It is about you taking care of the people that you have the privilege to lead. And it really is a privilege to lead people. And I, you know, I always get people, because I always say, you know, it's not about your title. It's not about your privileges. It's not about your pay and that you live in a nicer house and drive a nicer car. That's all great. And leaders generally get those things, and that's good, as long as that's not the reason that you want to be the leader. It is about how you treat the people that you have the privilege to lead, how you run your organization. And I always get somebody in the audience who says, you know, Colonel McCulloch, I really want my next promotion and I really want my next pay raise. And I said, well, if you do this right as a servant leader, you're going to get those things.
Right.
Because you're going to make the people in your organization better, and they'll make the organization better, and you're going to get credit for it. So you'll get your pay raise, you'll get your promotion, but you get it for the right reason, not because you were greedy, but because you helped other people get better.
Yeah, absolutely. So, you know, you approach your boss with this this vision. He laughs it off, and at the end of the 3 years, you succeed, right? You meet your targets. You get over 150 cadets, and you've more than tripled the program. You cashed in on that bet. What would you say? Like, what skills kind of allowed you to meet your goal at the end of those 3 years? Because it was a big task to take on.
Yeah. So when I took over the program, there were 53 cadets. And when I left 3 years later, there were 179. So I think a couple things helped me do that. Number one, not only did I take care of the cadets, so they didn't want to leave, but I also took care of the people who work for me. And, you know, from day one, I said, look, if you do the right thing, even if you make a mistake, we're all going to make mistakes. Nobody's perfect except me. Yeah. And yeah, I'm trying to convince my wife of that. You'd think after 37 years, I'd convince her, but she's not buying it.
No.
None of us are perfect. We're all going to make mistakes. And I said, look, if you make a mistake, fine. I'll back you 100%, as long as it's an honest mistake, as long as it isn't something that you knew was wrong that you were doing and decided to do it anyway. If it's an honest mistake, I'll back you 100%. And a couple of times I did that. And so they knew I cared for them. And so they worked extra hard. I think the other thing that really makes it possible is I would go when we had an issue, when we had something we had to accomplish. I didn't just walk into the room and say, okay, this is what we're going to do. I'd say, okay, guys and gals, this is what we have to do. Give me some ideas. And so then they'd throw out some ideas, some good, some bad. And, you know, and you're under no obligation as the leader to use any of those ideas. Your job as the leader is then to take those ideas and figure out which ones are the good ones and use some of those or none of them, and then throw the bad ones away and don't worry about those. But generally what I figured, I found out is what I did is I would take a little bit of your ideas and a little bit of Cassidy's ideas and a little bit of somebody else's ideas, and I'd throw in a little bit of mine, and then we'd come up with a solution. And what I found is two things happen when you do that. Number one, you build trust because you've asked people for their opinion. Even if you didn't use their opinion this time, at least you asked for it. Maybe you use it next time, they think. And you might. And the other thing that happens, which is huge, is that it's no longer Colonel McCulloch's idea or solution. It's our solution. We came up with this solution. And so now they got skin in the game. Now they work a little extra hard to make sure it's successful because their name is on it and their idea is in it. And so I think those were the things that allowed me to to be successful there. And just to think, I'm one of those people that I grew up with a father who made sure that I grew up with a winning attitude, that I wanted to win at everything I did. And I just refused to take no as an answer. And I just worked extra hard to make sure that we were going to be successful. And my guys and gals worked extra hard for me because I took care of them.
Right. Yeah. One of the things I got from your book is, when you have a team and you have kind of an objective in mind, you tell your team, what the boundaries are, and you kind of let them have a go at it. And as long as, the results fall within those boundaries, then you've had success, right?
Yeah. And who cares how they got there?
Exactly.
The analogy I always use is 7 + 2 is 9, but so is 6 + 3 and 5 + 4 and 8 + 1. Doesn't matter how you got to 9, you get there.
Right.
I don't care how you got there. I'm a micromanaging people is one of the worst things you can ever do. And unfortunately, I see it more and more in today's society that people want to micromanage people. And I learned that early on as I was a captain in the Army. And I tried not to micromanage before that, but this just really hit home to me. I was a captain in the Army, and I had a boss who was a colonel who eventually retired a 4-star general. And so way smarter than I was. And he told me one day, he said, Oak, leadership is on a scale. He said, on one end of the scale over here, you've got a micromanaging, authoritarian, do things exactly as I tell you to do them. He said, and nobody likes to work for that person. And we've all worked for that person. And it's horrible. And on this end of the scale, you have Attila the Hun and chaos. And he said, and you want to be as close to chaos as you can get. He said, because that's where creativity happens. That's where you use in other people's skills, other people's abilities, other people's knowledge. And he said, and the way you get there is that you train people to standard, so they can do what you're asking them to do. And then you give them their left and right, what you want it to look like at the end. You give them their left and right limits. You can use this much money, these people, this much equipment, whatever it is, you got this much time. And then you give them the authority to make it happen. Because you can give away as a leader as much authority as you want, and you should give away as much of it as you can. Can never give away responsibility. That's yours. Your name's always the one on the blame line. You're always responsible for everything that does or does not happen in your organization. But give away authority and let them then step back, get out of their way, and let them take it and run and do it. Doesn't mean you wash your hands of it. If they got questions, they can come ask you. If you see something that's going wrong, you should tell them, give them some options to do that a different way. But in the end, let them do it the way they want to do it.
Yeah, you're kind of like a facilitator or a source of knowledge, I guess, in a sense, but you're letting them have control or take ownership.
That's right. That gives them accountability. Now they're accountable because it's their project. So again, you can't wash your hands of it as the leader, but you got to be as hands off as you can possibly be. And you'll be shocked at what they come up with. It's amazing. I mean, I've had people who have done things completely 180 degrees how I would have done them, and they did probably a better job than I would have done.
Yeah. So going back to this bet with your boss, now he doubts you and you succeed. Once you took on a position of leadership and you had, junior officers come to you with their visions and saying, this is what I want to accomplish. What did you experience, with that bet and, meeting your goals? How did that shape how you responded to junior officers coming to you and saying, this is what I have a vision? Like, were you laughing at them too, saying it can't be done, or were you more encouraging?
No, I think I was more encouraging. I would always tell them what I saw as the pitfalls and what the obstacles were that they were going to have to overcome. And I carried this on into my civilian job at the food bank and as a Department of the Army civilian. I never told somebody, that can't be done or that's impossible. I just say, that's a hard road that you're planning on going down. And here's the things I see that you're going to have to overcome, and the things you're going to have to figure out a way around or over, or however you want to get around it. But there's going to be some pitfalls for you. And sometimes people fail. I mean, sometimes they think they can do it and they can't. Not sure anybody could have. But again, just because somebody fails doesn't mean that they didn't try and that they're not good at what they do. It's just maybe you got to try it a different way. One of my favorite, when I was a captain, I got to listen to General Hal Moore, who's probably one of the greatest combat generals the American Army's ever produced. That movie, We Were Soldiers Once and Young, that Mel Gibson played the part in, that's Hal Moore. That's who he was playing. And one of my favorite things that I heard him say, he said, life is not like baseball. It isn't 3 strikes and you're out. If you try something and it doesn't work, try something else. And if that doesn't work, you try something else. And if that doesn't work, you try something else. He said, and you just keep trying until you succeed, or at some point you might run out of options. But generally, if you try enough things, you'll succeed at it.
No, I hope so, because that's definitely what I'm trying to accomplish. So I hope what you're saying is true. So you've had all these experiences, with leaders and as a leader. Maybe this is a question I should have asked early on, but now that I know a little bit more about you, maybe this will make more sense. What's your definition of a leader now? Now that you've had all these experiences, because leadership and leader could mean different things to different people. What have you come up with as a definition?
Yeah, so I tell people and especially when I go to companies and I talk to senior leaders in a company, I say, look, you have to define leadership in this organization. Because I tell them, I said, I guarantee you got a mission statement of where you want, and a vision and a plan. So why would you not come up with a definition of leadership? And this is why that you need it. Because if you're developing young leaders like you should be as a senior leader, then how do they know what you're asking them to develop into? When they come to a decision, how do they know which decisions to make to get to the point where I'm going to be the leader that you've defined for this company? But I also tell people that individuals that you need to come up with your own definition of what a leader is and what they do. For me, it's very simple. It's you got to have integrity and character. Yeah. You got to take care of people, and you have to get results. Those 3 things. You have to develop junior leaders, which I think is part of taking care of people. Because I'm a firm believer, if you're a leader and you're not mentoring somebody, I'm questioning whether or not you're a leader, because leaders produce more leaders. They don't produce followers. So, integrity and character, taking care of people, developing that next generational leaders, and getting results. Because you can be what any definition of leadership says you're the greatest leader in the world. And if you don't get results, you're not a good leader. Because in the real world, results do matter. Maybe in fantasy land where everybody's a winner and everybody gets a trophy, maybe. But in the real world that we live in, results do matter.
Right. Yeah, I think I remember seeing that in your book. You say a leader creates more leaders, right?
Yes.
So could I ask you, what do you feel is the importance of being a good follower? Because a leader's got to have followers.
Absolutely. And to be a good leader, you have to be a good follower, because I don't care how high up you get, there's always somebody above you.
Right. So I guess a leader needs to know when to step back, maybe, and let somebody else who might have more knowledge or experience kind of have a voice. Or
yeah. So I think, that goes back to being a member of a team. And, one of my I got a favorite Vince Lombardi quote. I got a bunch of Vince Lombardi quotes. I mean, he was probably the greatest American football coach in history. And he said, a team is a group of people is not a group of people who play together. A team is a group of people who trust each other. And that goes along with the following, is that at some point on your team, somebody is going to take the lead, and you got to follow along to help that person be successful. Just as they got to follow along with you sometimes. And that really comes into play when you're in an organization that has 2 or 3 people who are equal, but you're still part of the team. In the Army, there's a company, and then there's 3 platoon leaders where you're all equal, but the company is the team. And so there were times when I wasn't the main mission, when I wasn't the person that all the resources went to. And when it did go to them, I had to back them and make sure they were successful, just like they did for me when I was the main effort. So, you have to learn to be a follower before you can be a leader. And I think that's easy, as long as you have the mindset that somebody's gonna have to follow you at some point if you want to be a good leader. So if you want other people to be a good leader, you're going to have to follow them on occasion when it's your turn.
Right. So we talked a little bit about leadership. You covered the military, and we covered a bit of kind of employer-employee relationship, but you also mentioned your dad. And one of the questions I actually have is, first of all, how can just an average guy like me, like a father, gain leadership skills in his day-to-day life? And then how can he apply them in his day-to-day life or with his children or what have you? Because leaders are important in all aspects of life, right?
Oh, absolutely. In every organization at every level, including starting with your family. I mean, that's where it starts. If you can't be a leader in your family, how are you going to lead other people? I mean, that's a tough one for me. I don't think those two things don't go together. You have to be a leader in your family first. And my father kind of again made sure I understood that your number one responsibility is to be a good father. Not sure he always was, but he tried. And again, none of us are perfect. So I think a way to improve your leadership skills, number one, is learn from other people. And you can learn just as much from somebody who does something poorly as you can from somebody who does something well.
Yeah.
When I don't know how many times I've seen somebody do something and that, the hair on the back of your neck stands up and you're like, yeah, I'm never going to do that. Well, that's a leadership lesson. You know now what not to do, which is half the battle. So I think just watch and learn from other people, because you can learn just as much from them, and that's valuable. And then as much knowledge as you get, either from reading about leadership, watching other people, that's all kind of worthless until you actually lead. And I tell people all the time, never turn down a chance to be a leader. If you have an opportunity to be a leader, and I don't care what it is, in your family, in your community, your neighborhood, your church, the business that you work, wherever it is, take that opportunity, because the only way you're going to get good at being a leader is to lead.
Right. It's rising up when those opportunities come your way and actually making the most of it and learning and growing.
That's right.
Wow. Perfect. Well, I think that's great advice on leadership. We'll take a quick break. We'll have some messages from NGBN. And then when we come back, I'll ask Oak some advice on success. So stay tuned.
This is NGBN TV, a network for men and home to top experts, speakers, authors, and more. Streaming TV for men, created by men.
But why?
Why are we a network that inspires,
Educates, entertains, celebrates, and supports
men in their 40s, 50s, and 60s, simply to save men's lives.
There is an epidemic in our community,
and it's taking men from us?
I'm talking about mental health and suicide.
But we have an answer, and it's streaming, live shows, sports, concerts, and more.
in a real way for men to lock shields.
We can't wait to launch this TV network for you and with you.
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 Join our movement at ngbn.tv, coming January 2024.
Welcome back, Trippers. Before the break, I was talking to Oak about leadership. I'm now going to ask him about success. And I got to say, Oak, when you mentioned that you were and you're planning on writing a book on success, or are you doing
I've
it?
started it. I've got the table of contents written, and I'm kind of throwing around the intro and that kind of stuff. But yeah, that one's coming next.
Okay, because I'm looking forward to it. Because when I was trying to come up with questions for this interview, I was like, I sure wish that Oak had a book on success. Because well, you're gonna have to do a lot of the heavy lifting here.
That's all right.
But success means different things to everybody. So how would you first define success if it has a different definition for everyone, and
Right.
then how can we then obtain success if it means something different for everyone?
Yeah. So I think success is absolutely at the individual level is absolutely an individual thing.
Right.
So one of the first things I say when I give my success presentation for audiences is I say, look, I can't define success for you. That you're going to have to do that yourself. And I think it changes. And I tell people, don't expect the definition you come up with today to be the same one that you're going to have 10 years from now, because it probably won't be.
Mhm.
As you progress through your life, through your career, either you're going to want more success, you want to do more things, or there may be, maybe you hit a roadblock that doesn't allow you to reach a certain level in the company you're in. So now maybe your level of success or your definition of success has to adjust a little bit. And that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. But you have to define that, just as I think a company does. That's their mission statement. I think if you're working for an organization that doesn't have a mission statement, then where are you going? How do I know when I get there? I got to know what the goal is out there for me to reach if you want me to help you become successful. So I think there's a couple different definitions. You got to have the organization definition, and then you got to have yours inside there, your personal one. And you say, so how can you be successful? And again, one of the things that I make sure people know is there is no cookie cutter solution. I can't sit here and tell you, you do this, and this, and you're going to be successful. That's not real life. I can tell you if you do certain things, you increase your opportunities and your possibilities of being successful, but there are no guarantees of success. I don't care what you do. So I think there's a few things you can do to help increase your possibility of being successful. Number one is I think you got to have some self-discipline, and you got to develop some self-discipline. And there's a huge difference between discipline and self-discipline. Discipline is me standing over you, telling you that you got to do something and checking to make sure you did it. I got it. There's a place in the world for that, but that's not for successful people. Successful people know what they have to do, and they do it, even if nobody's going to check up on it, and nobody's going to ask if you did it, but it needs to be done. So you got to develop some self-discipline. You have to develop good habits, and we are all creatures of habit. Anybody who tells you they're not a creature of habit is lying to you. Okay, we all are creatures of habit. If you don't believe that, remember how you shaved this morning. When you shave tomorrow, you'll shave the exact same way. I promise.
Yeah.
I mean, habits are a good thing as long as they're good habits, because it frees up our mind to work on things that we have to think about. The things we don't have to think about, the things that become habit, allows that. And so I think you got to work at having good habits, and you can develop good habits. You can take bad habits and break those bad habits, but it's a conscious decision either way to develop good habits or to break bad habits. And you got to do that. The third thing that I think is vital is you have to set goals. Because a dream without goals, an idea without goals is just a dream, and dreams they're nice, but they don't get us anywhere. Okay. So I always tell people you got to set goals. And there's a couple things that I tell people about goals. Number one, it's not a goal until you do three things. It's just a dream. You got to do three things. You got to write it down. Mm-hmm. You have to do something within the first 24 hours to start on the road of accomplishing that goal. Even if it's just a small step, do something that gets you started down that road. And number 3, you have to commit to it. You have to have that. It's not 3 strikes and I'm out. I'm going to continue to do something. You can always do something else to help increase your possibilities of success, always. And you got to have that commitment to do that. The other thing I tell people about dreams is don't make them small. Think about what, in the perfect world, what would my goal be? Even if, that's probably not going to be there, because the closer you get to it, the better you're going to be. You may not ever reach your goal, but at least you're always striving and you're getting closer and closer and closer, and you're going to be successful if you do that.
Yeah. Well, I like that you mentioned that, someone's definition of success isn't set in stone. Because I remember for me, when I was 19 years old, success was driving a Dodge Viper and having money in the bank and, having a nice house and all that stuff. Now that I'm almost 40, success is, stability and peace and my family being happy. And it's more, so absolutely we can change what our visions are or what our,
and there's nothing wrong with that.
Well, no, because we change as people and we learn new things. So we're always, adapting.
Absolutely.
So you've given us tips on success. What would you say is the biggest obstacle or that people have to overcome?
Easy. Fear.
Yeah.
Fear has killed more dreams than failure ever has. And it's fear, all kinds of fear. It's fear of failure. It's fear of success. There are people who are afraid that they're going to be successful. And you got to overcome fear. Fear is the number one thing that prevents us from being successful. And then the other thing that is a close second is lack of preparation. People just get lazy. They know they got to do something to prepare themselves to be successful, and they just decide not to do it. And so, I read somewhere, and I wish I could remember who said it because it's great. Said, success is when opportunity and preparation come together.
Yeah. I love that.
Because some opportunities are only going to come around to you one time in your life, only once. And if you're not prepared to take it, then you've just thrown that possibility of being successful at that away.
Yeah. One of the things that I've come to learn, working with NGBN and Ian, is that, once you have a vision, you have to align your thoughts, your words, and your actions with that goal, right? So it's like you said, it's nice to have a dream, but it's just a dream until you start taking action. So you would have to align yourself with what you're trying to achieve and then take those actions that'll get you there, not just kind of dream about it.
That's right.
So you said fear is one of the big obstacles. Do you have any advice on how people can overcome fear or kind of just get over that hump? Because I know for me, like, I have a vision, but there's days I'm not prepared. I don't know what I'm doing. I'm fearful of both failing and being successful. So how do we overcome that and meet success?
Yeah, I think you just stay the course. You stay focused on what you want to do at the end, understanding that there's going to be some failures. There's going to be some mistakes. There's going to be some days when you have doubt. And just remember, you've done the hard work. You've done the preparation. You've come up with your vision and your plan of how you want to get there. Just stay on the course, understanding you may have to do a detour around that obstacle that you came up against. Don't be afraid of it. Don't be afraid to make changes. That's the one constant in this life is change. We're all going to have to change things at times. So just stay focused on the golden ring at the end of the vision, and I think you'll be okay.
Yeah. So let's say for a minute that, I have my vision in mind. I have a clear picture of what I'm trying to achieve, right? And I have my definition of success. What's the very next thing that I could do tomorrow to start making progress?
To start.
Is that it? Just start and do something?
Absolutely. Do something that's going to start you down that road to accomplishing your goal, which will then allow you to be your definition of success. You know, putting things off is another procrastination is another reason why people aren't successful. Someday I'll do that. Well, that's someday. That's a nasty word. Someday. That day may never come if you keep saying someday. You gotta say, I'm going to do this, and I'm going to start right now. And will you be 100% prepared to start today? Maybe not. But at least once you start, you're going to figure out what else you need to do to prepare yourself and to help you be successful. And you can start down that road as well, because nothing says that you only have one goal. Sometimes you might have 2 or 3 goals that are tied together to get you where you want to go. And the other piece of goals that I think people forget about, because you have that long-term goal, and that's great. Everybody needs those. But you should also set up some intermediate goals along the way that says that you're on the right track. If I set up 5 intermediate goals that I know if I reach those, I'm moving toward being successful at my major goal. Then when you hit those, pause a moment and celebrate that. Not for very long, but celebrate it for a minute. And then start on the next goal, the next intermediate goal that's going to help you get to the big goal at the end.
Yeah, that's definitely something I've learned from my coaching is, don't wait for things to be perfect before starting, because they never will. And in doing that, what I've come to discover is, if I set a goal, sure, I might be tripping up that first few days, but while I'm tripping up, I'm also learning, why am I tripping up? What could I do better? And then you grow and you evolve and you start to get traction. And then, this is the next thing I need. This is the next thing I need. And then boom, next thing you know, you're on that next step. You take a little moment to celebrate and you're like, okay, how do I get to the next step? And how do I get to the next step?
Yeah. When you reach a goal, that's not the end. That's the first step in the next goal.
Right.
So, and that's the thing I always try to tell people is, that intermediate goal, even if you reach your main goal, that shouldn't be the end of it. Now you should come up with the next goal, so that when you reach a goal, whether it's an intermediate goal or the end goal in your mind, then that should be the first step into the next goal.
Perfect. Well, I think that's a lot of great advice to get us started on finding success, Oak. I have one more question for you. It's going to be about confidence and leadership, and also about confidence, but I'm going to save it for the wrap up. So we're going to go for a quick break. We're going to have a message from NGBN, and when I come back, we're going to wrap things up with Oak, and I'm going to ask him my final question. So make sure to stay tuned, and we'll be right back.
This is NGBN TV, a network for men and home to top experts, speakers, authors, and more.
I'm Chris Rubio of The Rubio Method.
I'm Charles Wallace of the Bear Essentials Podcast.
This is Bud from the Sports Are Gibberish Podcast.
Streaming TV for men, created by men.
Hello, my name is Ian Hill, and I have the tremendous honor of being the CEO of NGBN.TV. We are so excited for you to join us on this journey, helping us build a television network for men in their 40s, 50s, and 60s.
I am NGBN.
I am NGBN.
I am NGBN.
I'm NGBN, and so are you.
Join our movement at NGBN.TV, coming January 2024.
Welcome back, Trippers. This is the wrap up with Oak McCulloch. Oak, we've been discussing success and leadership. And now I want to ask you, this is something that's been sitting with me for about a year since I read your book. There's a part in your book where you say, you know nothing about hospitals. Actually, you don't like them because every time you go there, they want to give you shots, right?
Yeah, they want to do mean things to me.
That's right. But you said that if you're put in charge of a hospital tomorrow, you could run that hospital. And then you take it a step further and you say, not only could you take charge of the hospital and run it, but you could run it as well or better than the person currently running it.
I believe
and
that.
When I read that, that's a very powerful thing to say. Like that just exudes confidence. And I was like, wow. I mean, trust me, if I walk in a hospital tomorrow and they put me in charge, people are dying. So, well,
I don't believe that, but okay.
So as the guy right now, for me, like tripping through transformation, it's not just the name of my podcast. It's literally my life. Like I'm just trying to figure the things out. And I mean, like I have a vision. I kind of know where I want to go, but I don't really know how to get there. So reading that, you can go into a hospital and run it with such confidence. I want to know, like, what's the secret sauce? What do I got to do to get that confidence? And then what are the skills that I need to be able to do that?
Yeah. So I think the reason I say that, and I kind of proved this point. I'll hit that in a second. But leadership, and that's what you're talking about with running a hospital, is leadership. Leadership in any organization, in any profession, is about people. Plain and simple. It's not about flow charts. It's not about organizational charts. It's not about bottom line money. It is about people. And if you can lead people, you can lead any organization. If you go back to servant leadership, taking care of people, helping to develop them professionally, and using their skills, their knowledge, get over to Attila the Hun in chaos. You're using their skills, their knowledge, their abilities. You got to figure out who in that organization, when you don't have the answer, and you're not going to have all the answers, I don't care who you are and how long you've been there, then you know who to go talk to and say, okay, we got a problem. And it goes back to, I always use this example. My father's best friend when I was growing up worked at Chrysler Motor Company in the town next to us that had an assembly plant. And he worked there for 38 years. And for 38 years, he did the same job. He put fenders on whatever vehicle was being produced at that plant. And every couple of years, they bring in a new type of vehicle, and he'd have to learn how to put that fender on there. So if you were running that plant, if you took over that plant tomorrow, and all of a sudden somebody came up to you and said, hey, Guy, we got a problem with fenders. So who would you go talk to? I hope you go talk to the guy that's been doing it for 38 years. Yeah. He probably knew there was a problem and told somebody there was a problem, and they probably told him to go put fenders on vehicles and leave me alone. You got to use those people that have the knowledge, skills, and abilities that you don't have. And if you treat them right, then they're willing to work with you and for you and help you be successful. And I say with confidence that I could run a hospital. I could run any organization. I believe that. And I kind of proved it. I was a combat arms officer in the Army. I fought our nation's wars. That's what was my job, out on the front line, an infantry officer, armor officer. And then when I retired, I ran a food bank for 2 years. You don't get any different than that. That's a 180-degree difference. When I took over at the food bank, they were handing out 1.2 million pounds of food a year. 2 years later, when I handed it off, we were handing out 3.8 million pounds. I had doubled the truck fleet, and I almost doubled the size of the workforce, because it's about people. Leadership is about people. And if you can lead people, you can lead any organization.
So would you say it's about being humble and understanding that you don't have all the answers and you might not know how everything runs, but having the skills and knowledge to find the right people, to put in the right places and kind of let them run the show where they're best suited.
Right. And your job is to make decisions based on those experts' opinions and their views. And, because you might have 2 or 3 different people who have great ideas, and then it's your job to either meld some of that together, like I said earlier, or to say, okay, that's the best idea. That's the one we're going with. Knowing full well that something might happen and you might have to change directions down the road as more information becomes available or more resources or the situation changes. But at least you've started down the road and you're using some ideas from people who know what they're talking about and have been there and have some experience.
Right. Well, I think that's some great advice, Oak. Where can people find more about you? Like, where can they find your speeches, or where can they find your book? That's your book? Yeah. Where can they find you if they want to learn more about leadership and success?
Yeah. So I have a website, ltcoakmcculloch.com. And on there, it has a link to the book. If you want to buy a book, it takes you right to the Amazon link, and it's available in hardcover, paperback, ebook, and audio. And I read the audio. The only other voice on the audio is my wife's voice. She read the forward and the about the author piece, but everything else I read. And then it also has a list of things that I talk about, and it has my email, my phone number that you can reach out to me if you want me to come talk at one of your events, either a conference or a training event or something like that.
Excellent. Well, Oak, I want to thank you for not only coming on today and, supporting me with the podcast, but throughout the last year, we've exchanged messages through LinkedIn, and you've always been very supportive of me. So thank you for that. I'm really grateful.
You're doing great things, Ski. I mean, we need more people out there doing the things you're doing.
No, well, thank you. I appreciate that. And I will get better. And, perhaps in the future you can come back on and we'll see how much better I've gotten, and we can figure out, maybe you'll have your book out on success by then, and I'll be able to ask you some more questions.
Sounds good.
All right. Thank you. For all my listeners, thanks for tuning in. You can find Tripping Through Transformation at ngbn.tv, and we're also on YouTube, and I'm also on Instagram, and you can find me, Guillaume Poirier, on LinkedIn. Thanks for tuning in, and I appreciate you guys supporting me, and we'll see you guys for episode 5. Take care.